All right, welcome back everyone. We are really excited for today's video because I have a special guest today, and I'm so excited to share the message and the topic that we're going to cover together today. This month is all about talking about diet culture and how to kind of step into a health mindset rather than staying in that diet mindset. And I have a good friend of mine here that's going to help me with that. This is Trish Schneider, and she has a podcast called Wisdom with Trish. And I'm so excited for you to hear her story and her wisdom because she does have a lot of it. But real quick, if this is your first time coming across these videos, I'd like to welcome you. My name is Danielle Dinkelman, and I am a National Board Certified Health and Wellness Coach. And I also teach plant-based nutrition, which Trish and I have that in common, and we're going to get into that a lot today. But if this is your first time here, welcome. You can find us more on YouTube under Healthy Living with Danielle Dinkelman, and you can search that same name on Facebook and come and join us inside of our free Facebook group. I'd love to see you there. But for today, we're going to take a little bit longer than usual for our video, about 20 to 30 minutes to really flesh out how we can focus on our health without participating in diet culture. So Trish, welcome. Thank you so much for hopping on and having this conversation with me today. I'm really, really glad that you're here.
I'm glad too. This is like my favorite thing to talk about.
I know. I can tell.
That you asked me.
Yes, I'm so glad. Well, I've hung out for a little while listening to your podcast, and I just had to have you on, especially for this month, because of the other things I'm going to be talking about this month. And I just felt like it would be so powerful to have people hear some of these things from someone that's really walked through this journey and really teased out the messaging that is out there. Because I think it's really pervasive, and it's really damaging, and it's really sneaky. We don't even notice it most of the time. So for those of us that when I say the word diet culture, people are like, what are you talking about? Will you walk us through that? How do you define diet culture?
Well, I think that the biggest message of diet culture is anytime we're given a message that our body's wrong, that we're the wrong size, or think of the time when you were for me, I was a little person the first time I had a message that my body was not the right size. And then diet culture teaches us that we can't trust ourselves. We can't trust this body that's been given to us and that's perfect.
Yeah.
We can't trust it. So we need to tell you when to eat, what to eat, what time to eat, how much to eat. You should probably count calories, and you can't trust yourself. Don't listen to your hunger. You probably need pills, potions, and programs to be able to navigate your weight. Yeah. And there's just, all the trust is taken away that we should just naturally have in our bodies. Our bodies are so wise. Our bodies, no matter what size we are, our bodies show up for us and do what they're supposed to do every day. Yeah. But they don't get any credit. Right. They only get credit if they're the size we think they're supposed to be. Then, so that's all diet culture. Diet culture is out there telling young girls, starts out when we're young, that our bodies are wrong. Yeah. And the message just goes even deeper when we're adults, because now we think we're supposed to fix it. And, young girls try to fix it, and it's actually never broken. But diet culture tells us it is.
I love that. So tell me really, really quick, when did you kind of wake up to this? And what made that pivot point for you?
Well, the biggest thing for me was I very much felt directed. I had dieted crazy for 8 years. I had struggled with my weight as a young mom for 15 years, and I found a diet that I could finally manipulate my body size. And I did that diet for 8 years. I would eat 500 calories. I would take a hormone, and I couldn't even be like a super skinny person. It just made me be able to be like a normal size and not like the bigger size I used to be. But I did that for 8 years until I got to the point where I just couldn't do it anymore. I just said, imagine your life living 500 calories.
Oh, it's exhausting.
And it's insane. Yeah. And so I did that for so long. And then when I finally said, I'm not doing it anymore, I just was so prayerful and said, God, I'm not doing any diet until you show me. And so when he showed me eventually whole food plant-based nutrition, and it really aligned with my faith, I started doing that. And of course I'm thinking, oh, this is awesome. This is how I'm going to lose weight. I was saying I wanted to do it for my health, but let's be honest.
Yeah.
I did not mean health one iota. I wanted to be a smaller size.
Yeah.
So I'm doing this, and I'm losing weight. For the first 5 months I lost weight, and then the weight loss stopped. And then I'm like, but wait, God told me this is what I'm supposed to do. But now I'm not losing weight. So what am I left with? I'm definitely not going to go try another diet. And that's when he showed me as much the way our human bodies are meant to eat. He showed me that. And then at the same time, he started opening my eyes to diet culture. I started finding, I had a friend tell me about a podcast. I'm not even gonna remember the name of it now because I want to tell you. But it was just basically an intuitive eating. And I learned, he started like peeling back layers and started showing me, Trish, you've never been broken. You've been thinking this has been your trial your whole life, and this has actually never been a trial. And so and I still, that diet culture creeps in.
Yeah.
Sometimes I start hatching a plan to go back on that crazy diet because I can manipulate my weight on it. And then I have to get reminded. I, have a little, he talks to me and tells me, Trish, you know what you're supposed to be doing. And so, but it gets you, the idea that we're in control of it is so enticing.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is and that's what diets promise. That's what diets, they never come through on their promise. But I learned a really important statistic that my sister-in-law shared with me. And she said, did you know that 95% of all diets fail? And she was calling me to congratulate me that I had not failed for the last 8 years. But then in the intuitive eating world, I learned that 4% of those diets, now these are diets. These aren't like, let's just eat real food. These are diets. Right. 4% of those, the 5% that actually keep their weight off, 4% of those women are doing that with disordered eating. Yeah. And that's what I was doing. I might have been controlling my weight, but I was doing it in the most craziest disordered way. Yeah. And so, and then there's 1%. So you have a 1% shot when you try a new diet that you're going to be successful and do that with. Yeah. So with a good relationship with food.
Yeah. I love how you pointed that out. The fact that, first of all, the most damaging part of this whole thing is that the message is the only thing that matters is the size of your body. The only thing that matters is your weight. And then we buy into that. We say, yes, we want to be this way, this size, and we do anything it takes, whatever it takes, which often is, like you're saying, disordered eating, 500 calories a day.
I would have stood on my head, and it wouldn't have mattered. You told me what to do. I was wanting to not be my bigger size anymore.
Right. Yeah.
And then what's so fascinating about that is I get to be a size now that this is the size I used to do all that chronic dieting to stay at. And now I'm just that size. Yeah. And, and when I was my bigger self, if someone would have came to me and said, Trish, we're going to let you be a size 12. And I just said, oh, really? I'd have been so excited about that. Oh, it's so great. Yeah. But then when you get there and you get used to that for a while and diet culture creeps back in, all of a sudden that's not good enough anymore. Yeah. And I say there's a lot of diet culture in whole food plant-based eating. Not the actual what we're eating, but the message is you need to be very, very thin. And I have to kind of tune that out a little bit. Like, I am doing my best. I am eating what I know I'm supposed to eat. Yeah. And I really just leave the size of my body to God. Like, I am not in control of that.
I love that.
Off the table for me to not think that I'm in this, like, I'm completely in control of it.
Yeah. There's so much of what you're sharing, I think, is so valuable. And I've shared with you this before, but most of the women, and I work with a couple men as well, but mostly women, and they all come to plant-based nutrition. They come to health and wellness coaching, like you're saying, because they want to become healthier. And yeah, I'd really like to change the shape and size of my body as well. So if we're trying to separate these two things, how have you found that you can really leave that behind and detach that and stop fixating on that, letting that be your only measure of success? What then is your measure of success and progress in just becoming a healthier version of you? How do you stay grounded in that?
Well, I think that it starts with our worth.
Yeah.
And recognizing our worth, and our worth is solid. Our worth doesn't, we're born with our worth. The worth is, what we're doing isn't adding to it or subtracting to it.
Yeah, it's inherent.
Yes.
Yeah, it's
absolutely.
a given, it's a constant. And I think every human has a hard time with that, because even outside of diet culture, we live in a success culture. You know, I think we all, none of us are immune to that. So, you know, I've talked with some therapists over the years, and you know, I've heard a therapist say, you know, like if you were a homeless person on the side of the street, would you still have value? And you know, it's like, well, wait, I attach my value to my doings and my results and my success, the size of my body, how attractive, and all these things. So I think everyone, yeah, I agree. That is where it starts. I have inherent value. Really
Yeah, I think that when that is solid and you focus on that, and that's a remembering every day, like that's not something that I'm perfect in. That's something, when I start having diet culture messages creep in and I start feeling like I need to shrink my body, if I can go back to my worth and decide, okay, nothing really in my life is going to change for me to do that except my pant size. And my pant size is the least exciting or interesting thing about me. Let's be honest. But it gets the most focus, right? Like that is almost the most important thing. So realizing your worth, but then also I think that it's really important to recognize along your journey what gets better. Like I had so much hair loss being on a 500-calorie diet. So the fact that my hairs come back in, that I sleep like a rock star, where I have many, I sit in circles with women and they have sleep issues. I have no sleep issues. I had chronic constipation my whole life. Talk about that here. So, and that has 100% got better. It doesn't even come back. It's just 100% better. I don't have chronic seasonal allergies anymore. And I used to have horrible PMS where I wanted to like hurt my family. Cycle. And that's got better. So, oh my goodness, that's also wonderful. But what gets credit?
Just the way. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm sure there's moments where, like you said, even in the plant-based world, there's all this almost pressure, and I hear this from my clients. Well, I've had clients say, I don't want to tell people that I've started eating whole food plant-based because I don't look like I eat whole food plant-based yet. You know, and they're almost like embarrassed that they're not the poster child for whole food plant-based weight loss. And meanwhile, they are telling me the same thing that you just said. They're sleeping better. They feel awesome. Their energy is back. Like so much else has improved. So, okay, so you clue into your worth. You really stay centered in that. And then you notice all of the things that have improved and that are better. And why on earth would you throw the baby out with the bathwater at that point, right? Just, okay. So is there anything else that helps you stay grounded over here and not go back to diet culture?
I just think that when we really can focus on our bodies and the miracle that they are, that just you and I sitting here talking, our hearts are doing their job, our brain's doing its job, like all of these pieces of just, we have this amazing gift. Yeah. And I think that gratitude can play a part of that. And I think that it's not, sometimes that is not reminded to us until we are sick.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And if we can remember the gift it is in the meantime, and not just how it looks based on, base our blessing on how it looks, and we can just really base it on, my body shows up for me every day. Yeah. And it has no thought of what size I am. And even whatever size I am, it's working perfectly for me in that size, right?
I love that. I love that.
So when we have some gratitude.
Yeah.
You know, it's just such a beautiful gift we've been given, and I don't know that our gratitude's always there because we're so focused on
Shaming.
and like it's supposed to be or do a certain way, and I think that complete acceptance of where you're at for you, and and when you completely accept something, you don't try to change it. Like if I completely accept my husband, do I really accept him if I'm always wanting him to be different?
Right.
No, I completely accept him, our relationship gets better. When I completely accept my body, my relationship with my body gets better.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I love that. Thank you so much. Okay, so I'm in my head a little bit thinking, okay, the women that are listening to this, what are the questions? What are the things that they're kind of thinking of coming back and asking you? And a couple of things come to mind. First of all, so a lot of people get hung up on, well, I can't be overweight and be healthy. So in order to become healthy, I have to be a normal weight, you know, and they worry about that. And of course, I mean, science tells us that, yeah, there's a strong connection between chronic disease and being overweight. So what do you say to those people that are so fixated on weight for health reasons? How do you unpack that in your brain?
Well, some of that, what you just said, the thoughts, you know, the messages we get that to be healthy, you have to be a small size. And I have to say that's some diet culture in there. You can be healthier by your next meal. The next thing you eat can make you healthy. I mean, I just listened to a whole thing by Dr. Clapper, how he talks about what happens after a high-fat meal and how our body really has to push, the blood gets really murky and has to work really hard. How do our bodies heal and work on other things if they're just always having to process the horrible food we feed it?
Totally.
So
love that.
For me, if it's just about my next meal, because honestly, I've eaten this way for 2 years. And if I worry about the next 2 years, that's exhausting. But if I just can think about my next meal and what's the best choice for my body in my next meal, that is so much more attainable than me trying to think, well, I have to be thinner before I can actually be healthy, because that's not true. It's just not true, because I would still be waiting to have all of those ailments I have get better. Yeah. Right? If I was still waiting to be like whatever size the plant-based doctors think I'm supposed to be.
Totally. Love it. Perfect. Okay. So what if you're talking to someone that knows that plant-based is the way they want to go, and they're really just having a hard time getting traction with it? And they're still, like, I see this often. People treat whole food plant-based nutrition like a diet. They put all of the shoulds and have-tos and restrictions and deprivation of diet culture into plant-based eating. So tell me a little bit about how you approach that next meal. Like you said, I love how you said that. You can be healthier with your very next meal. Do you strive for perfection every meal, every day? How do you navigate that meal to meal?
I have to say that perfection gets you in trouble.
Amen.
Because there's so many messages in the plant-based community of how you should be eating, right?
Yeah.
And so to try to like narrow it down, and for me, my ideal meal is a Dr. McDougall meal, where I have half of my plate vegetables and half of my plate starches. That's ideal. Do I get to be ideal every day? No. Sometimes I'm going to make something different for my family, like enchiladas, and we're going to eat that. I mean, they'll be plant-based, but it's not exactly perfect, or, you know, but for most of the time, I can pretty much eat that way.
Yeah.
But I just think there's something about getting after the business of saving your life. Like, I'm at the age right now where now my friends' parents are passing away, and they're passing away in their early 70s. That is the American diet. That is, they're dying from things that we do not have to die from, and we lose years with our family.
Totally.
But get about the business. That's what Dr. Clapper says. Get about the business of saving your life, and stop thinking about. It never serves me if I make this about weight. Like when it starts being about weight, I know that diet culture's creeped in, and I have to like kind of reevaluate things because it happens.
Okay.
It just happens. That's the society we live in.
Totally. I love that. I love Dr. Clapper. And he is down to business, isn't he? So down to business, not of losing weight, but down to business of saving your life, of creating health with each and every meal and each and every choice. Okay, so talk to me about, to me, plant-based nutrition is kind of in different layers and degrees, right? And especially when we're first coming into this, especially if you're coming from a standard American way of eating, first order of business is, can I get all this highly processed food out of my life? Can I get the dairy and the meat out of my life? Those are big things. Do you feel like you are past those things? Because I hear you talking about perfection and you're like, well, we had plant-based enchiladas, but that's not perfect because it could have been a McDougal plate. So do you see what I mean? There's kind of different degrees here.
So many layers. And it took me a while to navigate because there's the vegan community, which offers lots of recipes that possibly could be fit into the plant-based world. And then there's lots of YouTubers with lots of good recipes. And for my husband and I'm insulin resistant and my husband has type 2 diabetes. And we're working on reversing those. And so I have to kind of live in the world of what's best for that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not reversing heart disease, but it looks like that. That's kind of what, we're eating an 80-10-10 diet, 80% carbs, 10% protein, 10% fat, which is really plants. So when I say I'm not perfect, if we're eating refined carbohydrates, which I love, and they are my friend, when those creep in, I have to say during COVID, being in house, that was where I just, I had to give myself some grace, and I gave myself some grace over refined carbohydrates.
Yeah. But
you have to figure out, I think that it can be a rabbit hole though. So you have to figure out what you want, what you feel is like the best. Get the oil out, get the meat and the dairy. That's your base. And then, my goal is just, I would love to have bread at every meal, but that is not the reality of diabetes. We really have to focus on whole foods. So that's the goal, but then I'm not always perfect. And I think that there is room for grace for yourself to know that I'm just gonna do the best I can. And there's some deal breakers, no meat, no dairy, and oil does creep in because we do eat at restaurants, and you can't be perfect in that there, but we try.
Yeah.
And it's honestly the part, when you ask me about progress, part of my progress is that doesn't feel hard to me anymore. It's just, and that's how I know that I'm not on a diet, because I'm not starting something on Monday, going off, and then I give myself, we just went on a little trip to see my brother, and he had things in his cabin, some treats, and I enjoyed some treats. And does that mean I'm not whole food plant-based anymore? Heavens no. It means I came home and got right back on track and I love to have broccoli for breakfast. I know that sounds crazy, but I had my broccoli for breakfast and my oatmeal, and I moved along, and Dr. Greger talks about that. It's not what you eat on Christmas and your birthday that kills you. It's what the 3 times a day. Yeah. And so after the business of just eating simple things 3 times a day.
I love it. Wonderful. I love how you spoke about deal breakers, that there are certain lines you don't cross. And I think everybody's journey is a little different of how long it takes them to get to that point that they can say, okay, yeah, I just don't eat those things anymore. And it's in the interim there that I find people struggle the most, because when we do go back to those really high fat, the dairy, the meat, those can really...
Yeah, they hijack our taste buds.
They hijack a lot.
Plant-based food doesn't taste good anymore.
Exactly.
So I'm actually really careful when if that does creep in. We had a ham at Christmas. All my kids, I have married kids, and they were all coming home, and that's what they wanted to have. So we had that, and the potatoes, the cheesy potatoes, and I had that, and man, that was good. But I struggled with what I ate for the next week. It hijacks it that quick.
Totally. Totally.
And so now I tend to be really careful about that, because I just want my food to taste good.
Absolutely. Yeah. And a good way to do that is to stay away from the salty, fatty, really rich foods. So Awesome. Okay. Well, we're going to wrap up here, but I had one really important question that I did want you to speak to. I have clients that still try to use this as a diet, and they're still trying. Their goal really subconsciously is still to just lose weight, and they're very fixated on that. And we kind of talk about, well, maybe that's not the main thing that matters. Let's focus on, in coaching, I talk a lot about the difference between focusing on what we do have control over, which is our behavior, our choices, the next meal, and the things that we don't have control over are the results. And as hard as that is to hear, it's the truth. And so I don't ever build goals with my clients around results. I always build them around the behaviors and the habits. Like you're saying, we can measure progress by saying, wow, this is easier. I can say I don't eat cheese anymore. I don't eat that, and I'm okay. So I'm going to ask, do you weigh yourself?
So I don't weigh myself. Now, I did in the beginning of my journey.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of stopped once my weight loss stopped. And my weight loss might pick up again. I don't know. I'm fine if it does. I'm fine if it doesn't. But I have thought a lot this week about why I don't weigh myself. And the number one reason is my most important relationship here on earth is with myself, right? And that relationship with my body. And I remember my mom telling us when we were kids, if we wanted to go play at a friend's house, she would say, is there another friend going to be there? And I'd say, yeah. And she goes, I don't know if I'd go. She said, three's a crowd. I just go another day when it's just you and your friend. And sometimes I would go and we would argue and it would be three's a crowd. Well, the scale, I have a relationship with the scale. And so I have a relationship with myself and my body, and then there's the scale. And three's a crowd.
Love it.
And so what I have found is I had to break up with somebody. I wasn't breaking up with myself. So I broke up with the scale and I just don't weigh. And weighing never served me. Like, I loved weighing when I was on my 500 calorie diet because the promise is you lose a pound a day. And as messed up as that was, it was exciting for me to jump on the scale. But now it's just, and that was so messed up. I don't want people trying to figure out what diet that was because that's my favorite. Bring that up. It's not good. It will mess you up for the rest of your life. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't serve me. And it's just data. It's as important as how tall you are. It's just data. That's all it is. And it's data that's not really that accurate, honestly. It doesn't know if you're menstruating. It doesn't know if you're fighting a disease. It doesn't know anything. And what I found is what is actually a lot more accurate and actually measures health is getting your blood work done. Get your blood work done. Get it done before you start. If you haven't started and you're thinking about it, then get your blood work done. And then I remember I got my blood work done right at the beginning. And that's how I learned I was insulin resistant, and that took me to the path of eating whole food plant-based. And then 2 months in, I took my blood work again, and it had already improved. Like, that is exciting stuff. And then I just did it again in January, and it's even better. And so that's the real, for me, the scale doesn't really tell me anything, except, and then it can just make me frustrated.
Totally.
Like, I can be making all the perfect choices and doing all the things that I've been taught are the right things to do, and nourishing my body the way it needs. And the scale doesn't tell me what's really happening. Yeah. It tells me one thing, and it's what my body weighs, and it's not that important data to me. Now, and if that helps you, and that, I'm not saying nobody should weigh, but I think it's okay to think about, does it serve me? Yeah. And I'm going to eat this way the rest of my life. Like, this is just, it's kind of like when you wear a seatbelt. So I know that this is like just 100 years of research shows us this is the ideal diet for people to eat. Yeah. So knowing that, it's like I wear my seatbelt. When I put my seatbelt on, I'm not like checking it every 5 seconds while I'm driving to make sure that it's not come undone, or I'm not scared that, oh, it's not going to work in an accident. No, I just know that it's on and I'm fine. I don't give it another thought. Yeah. That's really what this needs to be. We just eat this way, and we don't really have to worry about it because we know we're doing what's ideal for our body. And so that's kind of how I think about it.
I love it. That's a really powerful message. And, you know, we've had some conversations before, and we've said, you know, just trusting the process and trusting that 100 years of science, trusting the food that God put on this planet, and trusting our bodies, and just throwing that diet culture and all the messaging that wants you to forget your inherent worth out.
Well, and healing, you don't know what your body, how it's healing. You can't see that all the time. And if you think that healing is just weight loss, that's just not true. Your body has, I mean, I tortured my body for 8 years.
Yeah.
It's so scared we're going to go back into a famine at any second. It might think I need to keep some fat. And that's probably the case. And that's probably a good idea.
Yeah.
You know? So my body's so wise. And we just have to trust it, that it's getting what it needs and it's doing what it needs to do. And, you know, and then when you get to, like, with your clients work with you, like, maybe if they're feeling frustrated, because it is real that if you're in a large body, that is hard to navigate the world. And you do want that part of healing is having that, you know, change. And so I'm not discounting that. I'm not saying that, you know, but for most people that does happen. Yep. But I don't think like what you said, you don't throw it all out when it's not happening exactly like maybe another diet has worked for you, because your body heals and you can't see, you know, maybe weight loss is the last thing your body's concerned about, and it's got a lot of other healing to do first.
Yeah.
You just don't know.
Totally. Well, I love your message. Where can people get in touch with you? Where can people reach you? Maybe listen to your podcast. Tell us a little bit about that.
So I share what I eat on my Instagram, and that's Wisdom with Trish. And it's usually in my stories. I post, you know, on my timeline at some, but it's mostly on my stories, and you can kind of see what I eat, and I kind of call out diet culture on there. And then my podcast, I'm on all the podcast forums. So however you like to listen to podcasts, you can find me there. And it's just Wisdom with Trish. And it's the most fun thing I've ever done, because I love talking about this. So instead of talking to all my friends about it and making them go a little crazy, I just started a podcast.
Perfect. I love it. Yeah, you do get to the point where you learn so much that you do get to this point that you feel like you want to shout it from the rooftops, and podcasts are so good for that. So, thank you, Trish, so much for sharing your wisdom. Again, thank you so much. I just love it. And I hope that people will go and listen, because you do share a lot of very, very useful wisdom, especially for those of us that need to kind of start unprogramming the programming that diet culture has given us. And I think you just do that beautifully. So thank you so much. Appreciate it. Okay, those of you that are listening, please check out Trish's podcast. It really is fantastic. And come and find us in the Facebook group, Healthy Living with Danielle Dinkelman, and we'll see you next time.